Hello and welcome to our first Warhammer 40k Sanctus Reach tutorial. Today we will be discussing the basics of movement and how to acclimate yourself to the dangerous battlefields of Alaric Prime. We will also be discussing actions, movement points, and reaction shots. If you select a unit carrying a ranged weapon, you will see any targets in range marked with a target icon. This means we can shoot at it. If out of range, there will be no such icon. If an enemy unit is out of range, you can use your movement points to move your unit in range and then begin firing. Keep in mind, however, that if you fire before moving, you will lose some of your valuable movement points. Note that the further you are from the target, the lower your accuracy, so sometimes you may want to advance to get a better shot. Of course, if a target presents itself in good location, you may want to go ahead and open fire. When moving, you may want to take a look at the movement points for your unit. For instance, this unit can move 20 movement points and still fire twice, or 10 movement points and still fire twice due to the actions available to the unit. I'm going to move this unit and waste its movement points to show you that we still have actions available. Some units have reaction shots. These essentially allow them to fire at any unit that moves into their line of sight. For these Space Marines, their field of reaction is fairly conical, although we can move them around to face different directions depending on where we anticipate an enemy attack. These crosshair icons on tiles represent which tiles it will react to if it has sufficient reaction shots. Keep in mind, if a unit only has one reaction shot, it will not be able to fire at a second unit that comes into its line of sight. When setting your facing and selecting units, please be aware that if you have two units next to one another, when you left-click the adjacent unit, it will default to popping up the selected unit's action UI, not selecting the adjacent unit. If you want to select the adjacent unit, you must deselect the current unit with a right-click first. Alternatively, you can just make a long left-click on the adjacent unit to select it. Left-click and hold the button down till a new unit becomes selected, skipping the action UI of the current unit. Some weapons, such as pistols, have 360-degree reactions. In other words, they can fire at just about any tile around them, but they have a very short range. However, others such as flamers and some other heavy weapons have no reaction shots at all. Keep this in mind when putting them on the front lines. To check this, you'll want to go to your unit stats where this information is available. It also displays the range of the weapon, among other details. Now we're going to fire on this unit of work boys right here, to show that our bolters are capable of directing fire at it. Now I've already fired at this unit once, so I'm going to fire at it a second time, and this will consume one of our actions. Now on to close combat. To enter melee, your unit will have to be in a tile next to an enemy unit, as shown here. Be careful, however. If you spot red tiles in your line of sight, these represent enemy reaction tiles. So if you wish to move to this spot, you run the risk of taking some incoming fire. Units will not always react as they have their own AI, and there can be any number of reasons for this to occur. Morale is too low, its chance to hit is so poor that it decides instead to save its shot, or it has a very powerful weapon and considers your target rather puny and not worth the effort of wasted points. In general, most units get a single reaction shot per turn and 2 regular shots. As you can see here, since the enemy has already reacted to one of our units, it is unable to react to our other unit when we move it into its zone of reaction. Alaric Prime is a dangerous place, and once you enter what is called a zone of control, the melee you are engaged in is now to the death. Neither unit can leave the area until one of the units has died in vicious hand-to-hand combat. Note, only enemy units with melee weapons exert a zone of control, so units such as a Grot or Blasta unit do not restrict movement or lock you in combat. If, however, you move next to an enemy that excels at close combat, such as an Orc squad with choppas, be prepared to defend your honor to the death. In close combat, you can still use your ranged weapons, although they're going to be much less accurate. If you have a pistol, however, it's still fairly effective, and you can decide whether to fire at your enemy or use a melee attack. Once you've engaged a unit in a melee attack, realize that if your attack misses, the enemy will react, perhaps even causing some serious damage to your unit in the process. Note, melee reactions do not require or consume reaction points, so you should be especially careful when trying to melee powerful units. Be aware that every weapon has its own strengths and weaknesses. While it may seem like a good idea to fire that melt-a-gun at a puny group of Gretchen, Why not save your shots for a more serious threat? Surely those missiles will be better served taking down an orc war machine, or vice versa if you're playing as the orcs. Which side you want to play will depend on your general interest in the faction, as well as their playstyle. Space Wolves are some of the most elite soldiers in the universe. As such, they don't really rely on numbers, but on technology and superior skill. Orcs, on the other hand, rely on numbers. The idea behind the Horde is to overwhelm and envelop the enemy, trying to surround them, or to be so numerous that the Space Wolves simply cannot take them all down. As the Space Wolves, don't forget that range is your friend. Some units such as Terminators excel at close combat, but you will want these to be the very front of your line, while keeping more reliable shooters behind. As the Orcs, you'll be wanting to close in close combat as soon as possible. This concludes our basics tutorial. For more in-depth look at the mechanics, please keep watching and soon we will have some expert tips. Thanks for watching and good luck on the battlefield.